Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo to Bowl fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, can you believe it? We made it to July, the last month without NFL football, if you count the preseason games, etc., etc. But still, well, we got training camp coming up here in just a matter of weeks now. Chargers season just around the corner. And with that, we're going to start talking a little bit more about training camp and what to expect and what to get excited about, what to look for more specifically. And every single year, I would say, there's a handful of Chargers players that really kind of grab the attention of Chargers fans. We like to call them the camp stars of a certain year. And this season, I think we got our eye on quite a few players that I think could really shine this season. I think it's going to be a special class of rookie players, but as well as some guys I think are ready to step up and into some bigger roles that should start giving us a preview of that in training camp. Of course, you're going to see big guys like Justin Herbert out there getting fans excited with his brand new weapons. We may even see some awesome narratives like a JC Jackson making his return from injury. But this video, we are going to be maybe handpicking some other players that I think have a really good shot at making a big impact in 2023, especially in training camp coming up again just in a few weeks here. So before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor. It's almost that time again, isn't it? Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to get in on the action with the best fantasy platform on the web, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. A great way to support the channel as well as have some fun along the way. With that, before we get into this one, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this training camp stars preview. Lights, camera, action. Your Chargers 2023 Camp Stars preview. These are going to be the players that I think are going to have a pretty spectacular training camp, as well as some rumblings that I've been hearing in terms of some good things we saw OTAs minicamp. Should be a pretty good one today. So let's just dive right into it. We have a good handful of players that we're going to try and get through today, starting with this man right here. I'll be impressed if you guys know the name to the number 83, Pokey Wilson, undrafted free agent coming in this last draft season with the Chargers. This is definitely one of the messiest, I would say, position groups on the roster in terms of who's the Chargers gonna bring onto the team permanently, because there's a lot of talent out here. Of course, you got the top three in Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Quentin Johnston. You also got Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, Darius Davis, the new rookie, as well as now Pokey Wilson, who's been really turning some heads at OTAs and minicamp the last couple of weeks. I would say the last month or so. This guy, honestly, I think one of those guys that we expected to be a very good candidate in terms of making the roster as far as undrafted guys are concerned. This is definitely going to be very tough for the Chargers, because we've watched this guy, I would say, week in and week out in camp and training, go out there and really impress spectators and coaches. Pokey's been having the ability to get open, showing off a little bit of speed as one. It does seem that, you know, Easton Stick, even Justin Herbert at times, really does look for number 83 more often than not. So Pokey Wilson, that's going to be a name to definitely monitor during training camp, because it's going to require a pretty unique situation in terms of the Chargers wide receiver group in order for him to even make the roster. I would say that the player with most danger in losing his job this offseason would probably be Jalen Guyton. But Jalen Guyton's a great player, especially when healthy. I think the biggest thing that could lead to maybe a shocking cut would maybe be something like the injury that he sustained last season, a little bit more serious. Maybe it does affect his speed a little bit. Maybe a guy like Pokey Wilson does step in and take that position. So in the comment section, I actually want to ask you guys, who are you more rooting for at this point? Jalen Guyton, the speedster, the man that really helped Justin Herbert in his rookie season throw out those, H-bombs, 20+ yard touchdowns, or this new hotness in Pokey Wilson, who seems to be getting open left and right, giving options for those quarterbacks, especially at a position like this. He feels like the brand new Michael Bandy, who was let go by the Chargers last season, but with a lot more speed. So you guys let me know what you think of Pokey Wilson in the comment section below. Next up, our first rookie on the list. Of course, you're going to see a few of them on here. We see rookies every single season really pop off in training camp, get Chargers fans really excited. The first one that I'm very excited to talk about is this man right here. You guys know the number to the name here. This is Tuli Tuipulotu, edge rusher for the Chargers, drafted in the second round this last season. This is pretty insane, dude. Just looking at this photo, the reason I chose this photo first to show you guys is really to show you the exposure that Tuli is being given with the Chargers this season. He's being mentored here, of course, by Joey Bosa, who is one of the best, if not like a top 3 or 5 guy in the NFL at his position. Absolutely insane to see, what Tuli, who already has a lot of talent coming into the league at that position, what more he can add to his repertoire being exposed to a guy like Joey Bosa. And that's not it, man. Khalil Mack, who wasn't shown in that photo, also one of the best to ever play at the position in the NFL. He's going to have both of these guys mentoring him in his first year in the NFL, which is pretty insane. That's pretty wild. You can also say the same thing about, Quentin Johnston a little bit being mentored by, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. This is going to affect his development, especially in his first year impact. Okay, so individually, though, Tuli Tuipulotu, what I expect in his first season, he didn't have to go out there and be like a superstar. You know what I mean? The Chargers, I would say at this point, 3 deep with some pretty insanely talented edge rushers in Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and now Tuli. He's going to be rotated in there, and I think we're going to see a little, healthy rotation of Tuli in there. But at the same time, what I'm expecting to see is the flash in the pan of what we're hoping to pair with Joey Bosa in the future, and I think we're going to start seeing signs of that in training camp this season. What I hope to see, and it's almost like those flip books where you draw the first picture and then flip and second picture, you kind of flip and see the progression of how things go down. I'm hoping to see with Tuli the impressiveness that we were hoping to see when we drafted him, right? Like, man, this guy's got some moves in terms, I would say, more signature in his power rush. But then kind of progressively flip that book and see maybe him adding some more tools to his belt as he continues to have exposure to Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. And with that, I think we're going to start to see a lot of Chargers fans, maybe NFL spectators, see the potential of a Tuli with the Chargers in particular. You can argue that Tuli going to other teams might not have the ceiling that he has with the Chargers, and it's, again, a lot because of the exposure and the specific defense that Brandon Staley likes to run. I think we're going to see a really nice performance for him in the offseason, in training camp, and I think he's going to turn some heads out here, man. I think, again, it's kind of hard to do that in training camp from the edge position, but I think he's going to do enough where Chargers fans get pretty excited to see him in action in the regular season. Next up, let's talk a little bit about offense here. Starting with the backup quarterback position, which got a little bit shaken up this season with the drafting of Max Duggan out of TCU, the quarterback to the receivers the Chargers took in the draft as well. But that's not the quarterback I want to talk about. Sure, I think Max Duggan does have a future with the Chargers as their backup, especially now that the NFL has changed the rules in terms of, what counts as a rostered quarterback, emergency QBs on game day, et cetera, et cetera. No, instead, I want to talk about Easton Stick, who already in OTAs and in minicamp has really been impressing folks. And this is kind of interesting because if you were to tell me this last season, right, that the Chargers with Easton Stick going into, free agency in his last season, right, with them drafting a quarterback, I don't know if I would have thought that Easton Stick makes the roster. I would have said, oh, okay, so obviously the Chargers are going to part ways with Easton. They're going to go draft a new backup. They're going to be rostering 2 quarterbacks. No, instead what we're looking at, the Chargers, they may have seen something that they really like out of Easton Stick over the past several seasons as Justin Herbert's backup quarterback. And that's something that a lot of us, casual football fans or spectators will never get to experience. We're not going to see what the coaches see. We're not going to see what the front office sees with guys like Easton Stick. They saw something that they liked, that they trust to back up a Justin Herbert. They didn't want to let go of it and instead offered him an extension, a new contract to stay the backup quarterback for the Chargers. Now, in terms of what he can offer on game day, obviously he's going to be the backup. Knock on wood, Justin Herbert stays healthy. We know what the role of an Easton Stick is. But behind the scenes, Easton Stick is also kind of the guy that keeps your tools sharp, right? The guy that, you're passing to a Keenan Allen a Mike Williams sometimes, and of course, those backups. And from what we're hearing, he's been doing a spectacular job. Him and Max Duggan both, as a matter of fact. Now, Max Duggan, the rookie, showing that kind of, upside, definitely does give him maybe a little bit more upside in terms of his longevity as a backup quarterback. But as of right now, it feels like Easton Stick has been doing a really good job, responding very well with the new repertoire of wide receivers. We've got a lot of them this season, and Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis and Pokey Wilson, a bunch of other undrafted guys. Easton's been doing a fantastic job, and this gives me hope that he is going to be that long-term backup quarterback that the Chargers can trust. It seems that the Chargers have kind of figured out what they like in a backup. If you look at Easton and Max Duggan, they're kind of similar in a lot of ways, especially with how you would roll them out. Maybe a little bit more, dependent on their speed, buying time outside the pocket, etc., etc. Easton Stick, man, again, the backup quarterback's going to see a lot of looks in training camp, and I think Chargers fans are going to feel a little bit more comfortable with who's backing up Justin Herbert by the end of training camp. So there you go. Next up, let's go to another undrafted guy, man. Again, an undrafted storyline is something that the Chargers in particular has been very good with the past several decades. The Chargers, some of the best players to ever play for this organization, have been undrafted, which is pretty insane to think about. Enter in, I think, the man with the best chance to make the start, or the 53-man roster, in Jared Clark, defensive lineman. This dude, honestly, to a lot of any NFL analyst surprise, did not get drafted in the top 7 rounds in the NFL draft. I think some people even had a round 5 grade on this cat. Instead, the Chargers were able to land him as an undrafted rookie. He, I think, fits very well with what Brandon Staley wants to do on defense, especially when it comes to a depth defensive lineman. This dude, a lot of potential in terms of defending the run. And if he can continue to, add to his tool belt in terms of how he can get better in terms of defending the run, maybe even adding a little bit of pass rush to his, gear there, I think he definitely has a great shot at making the roster. And I do think we're going to start seeing signs of that in training camp this season. The Chargers defensive line is going to look a little bit different, especially in the back end in terms of, backups and stuff like that this season. We lost a lot of talent. I think some fan favorites you could even argue in, like a Braden Fayoko. Christian Covington's gone. You have guys recovering like Tito. It does open a door for guys like Jared Clark, and who, again, I think has a lot of potential to really be a good caliber backup for the Chargers starters, and maybe even earn a little bit of snaps in terms of defending the run, maybe alongside like a Tito or something like that. I think we're going to see a pretty nice duo, or I should say maybe even trio on the interior of that line, including a Jared Clark in a lot of instances in training camp. So look for number 72, again, under the radar kind of guy. A lot of the times when you talk about camp stars, you're thinking about those skill positions at receiver and corner and quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. Don't forget the guys in the trenches. They can oftentimes make a big impact in the rest during the course of the year, especially in terms of depth. We've seen year in and year out teams really kind of falter after losing a starter, on the offense or defensive line. Guys like Jared Clark could become vastly valuable, and I do think he's going to start showing his value here pretty soon. Next up, another guy that really started to turn some heads in the mid part of the season last year. This here is Jasir Taylor, late round pick for the Chargers last year at cornerback, him and Dean Leonard, which I wanted to bring up Dean Leonard briefly because I have heard some nice things about Dean in OTAs in terms of his progression. Of course, he was kind of a disaster player last season in terms of, are we going to hand him a little bit more responsibility as a depth kind of guy? He saw a little bit more on special teams, but he had a long ways to go in terms of coverage. This, in terms of what I'm hearing from OTAs and minicamp, he's starting to look a little bit better too. But the guy I want to talk and highlight about here is his draft teammate here in Jasir Taylor, who really started showing flashes in the pan last season. Of course, as the Chargers had to call on some of their depth with, J.C. Jackson going down. I think at times Bryce Callahan as well. Jasir Taylor is really starting to turn into a story that I think all of us should follow a little bit more closely. It seems that the Chargers, if you're watching OTAs and minicamp and, of course, upcoming training camp, has been handed a lot more responsibility at the star position, your nickel corner. And if you guys have read anything about, Brandon Staley and and heard him talk about his defensive scheme and system. That position is pretty coveted on this team. It's pretty dang important. And to hand it off to, I think Jasir was a 5th or 6th round pick, is pretty significant. It does show that the Chargers have a certain level of trust in this player who has already proven it on certain circumstances last year. I think it was in the Dolphins game that we saw some pretty significant plays by Jasir Taylor, and being able to step into that role, which was manned by Bryce Callahan last season. And of course, it more than likely is going to be handed to J.C. Jackson when he comes back from injury. Still shows a lot of trust in Jasir Taylor, though, and that does give me a lot of peace of mind in terms of the depth that we're going to see from the cornerback position because of Jasir Taylor. Maybe a little bit of improvement from Dean Leonard. It's going to be interesting to see how this story unfolds. Of course, we already have the narrative of J.C. Jackson, who was fantastic in training camp last season. I do expect to see the same thing this season, but Jasir Taylor is going to be one that I think we all should be following very closely as well, because he could be the future at nickel for the Chargers here in the next couple of seasons if he continues to develop the way that we've been seeing the last couple of years. So Jasir Taylor, let's look for some big plays from him. I think he's going to be a pretty significant part of this defense going forward. All right, next up. Okay, another trench guy, man. And this is the positions that I think really have to pay attention to during training camp in the offseason, because these guys, again, with injury comes the foresight of who you're bringing in as these backups. And I think Jordan McFadden is going to be a very important part of that this season. I think drafted by the Chargers in the 5th round this last year. To me, I see a backup swing tackle. A lot of people will say he's a bit too small for that position. The Chargers have never really shied away from size, letting a player play on the outside. Our star Pro Bowl left tackle, Rashawn Slater, people said he was too small. Jamari Sawyer, the man who stepped in for him last season at left tackle, people, label him as a guard, which he is, but he played fantastic at left tackle. I think our swing is going to be Jordan McFadden, and I do think we're going to see some cool things. And again, it's really hard to label a guy a camp star from the offensive line position, because it's really difficult to see that in action. Of course, we saw that with Slater in his season with Khalil Mack, those guys clashing. That was really epic, but you rarely get to see stuff like that in training camp. I think the subtleties of performance that we're going to see from Jordan McFadden will speak to his potential going into the season. And again, a backup swing tackle, guys, that's more important than I can possibly describe to any football fan. I think in terms of Chargers terminology, like, tell me, but in Chargers speak. In Chargers speak, Jordan McFadden, if he turns out well, it's going to make us very grateful we don't have Storm Norton on the team any longer. Again, no big, slappage to Storm Norton. He had his moments, but it really was very concerning for Chargers fans when we saw Storm out there. If we see a guy like Jordan McFadden and he had a pretty good, training camp, I think we're all breathing a little bit easier. All right. Next up, another new addition to the team coming up here as a camp star. Let's talk a little bit about this duo right here. Eric Kendricks and, no, not Kenneth Murray, Dayan Henley. I think both of these guys are going to have a fantastic camp. And it's actually kind of interesting because, of course, you're going to see some veterans go out there and really put on a show for their teams. Of course, I think we're going to see a lot of them for the Chargers. I think our edge rushers in Mack and Bosa are going to do awesome. Our receiving duo in Keenan and Mike, those guys are going to do awesome. But when it comes to a new addition, I think the Chargers are going to be very excited in what they get from Eric Kendricks. Even though he is a bit older, he's only going to be with the team likely a couple of seasons. I think the Chargers finally hit the nail on the head of what they want from the middle linebacker position. I think the Chargers have been looking for a guy that can cover for a long time. I think Drew Tranquill was really getting to that point where, my God, the Chargers have the perfect linebacker for their system. Then whatever the Chargers' philosophy may be, they let him go. Now they bring in a guy in Eric Kendricks. I think they're going to be very pleasantly, not surprised, but very happy with that decision, because Eric Kendricks, if anything in his career, has really made a name for himself as a coverage linebacker, a do-it-all kind of linebacker. And although I think the potential for a guy like Kenneth Murray to be paired with him, learn a lot from him, does exist, and hopefully give, Kenneth Murray a chance to bounce into that player that the Chargers were hoping to get when they drafted him. Maybe by some long shot, get an extension by the Chargers, which I think is very unlikely. I think that Eric Kendricks and his influence is more going to be felt by number 0 on the team, the first 0 in Chargers history, and Daiyan Henley, who, if you guys look in the preseason, or I should say in the offseason, of who he was being compared to as his NFL comp, it was this man in Eric Kendricks, the coverage linebacker. I think we're going to see the same thing from Daiyan Henley. These guys play a very similar game. I think getting the opportunity to learn from Eric Kendricks is going to it's going to boost Daiyan Henley's progression coming into the NFL, his growth, especially in his rookie season, and maybe even give him the opportunity to overtake a guy like Kenneth Murray a lot earlier than a lot of us are thinking. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in training camp. I think the linebacker position went from a little bit sketchy and worrisome for Chargers fans to all of a sudden kind of exciting. I'm excited to see, Eric Kendricks go out there and show that veteran leadership, show the wisdom that he's gained over his course with the Minnesota Vikings, and translate that over to the young rookie who is compared to him. The Chargers finally get themselves that coverage linebacker they've been looking for a long time. I think this could be pretty interesting and very exciting, and I do think that they're going to mesh so well with this system that Chargers fans are not going to be able to help but notice that these guys are a big impact, thus a camp star this season. I'm very excited to see that duo go to work. Next up, let's get back to the offense, talking a little bit about number 28, Isaiah Spiller. I get it, guys. Last season was a disaster, a dumpster fire of a season for Isaiah Spiller's rookie year. But it was just that, his rookie season. We do know there was an injury involved in there as well. He ended up only getting like something 2.5 yards per carry, 50 yards on the season. It was definitely not what we were all very excited out of the 4th round pick for the Chargers. We're really excited to see what he could bring to the position as a backup. Instead, Joshua Kelly really blasted onto the scene. I expect to see kind of the same thing this year. The Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly show. Chargers running game should be pretty healthy behind that, especially in Kellen Moore's new system. But also keep an eye on Isaiah Spiller. We've seen some stuff this offseason, I think very recently too, of his trainer going out there showing off the routine of Isaiah Spiller, showing off some pretty impressive, numbers in terms of his training, his strength conditioning. Very excited to see him bounce into that role a little bit, because I think it's extremely important for the Chargers to keep an eye and monitor Isaiah Spiller because of the future of the running back position for this team. We don't know what's going to happen to an Austin Eckler in the future. He could be moving on, chasing the money next year. I hope that's not the case, but if he does, Isaiah Spiller is going to be called upon pretty aggressively, and we might be able to see the narrative that's very similar to a Josh Kelly in that instance. Josh Kelly was not very good his first couple of years in the NFL. I think a lot of people were saying he was going to be a bust. He wasn't going to get an extension. He still might not, but he wasn't going to get a lot of playing time with the Chargers because he just really didn't fit, and he wasn't really, meshing with the team and his pro comeuppance, right? Now at this point, Josh Kelly has really proved himself a very capable RB2. I think we might see the same kind of growth and progression for Isaiah Spiller. So keep an eye on him in training camp. I think he could be a star, especially when paired with the fullback that a lot of us were very excited to see come onto this team in Xander Horvath, who's going to be another one of my camp star preview guys. Of course, when you see a guy with an RAS score like Xander Horvath coming into the league, you get very excited what his potential could be, an athletic freak. You pair him up with a guy like Isaiah Spiller. Last season, there was a lot of hype in terms of what this duo could do. And of course, we didn't see a lot. We saw actually a lot more from Xander, the 7th round pick, than we did from Isaiah Spiller. But I think this year is where you take what you learned last season, you apply it, you see him kind of go ham in the offseason. I'm really excited to see what these guys can do in training camp. And what more is I hope that the Chargers show us in training camp that they got plans for the fullback position this season. Last season, when they involved Xander, it seemed like they saw a lot of success. The first couple of touchdowns in the first 2 games last year were from Xander Horvath. They moved away from it for some reason. If we can see more involvement from him in training camp, it'll get me re-excited for what they can do in the regular season with this weapon. So I'm hoping to see some pretty fun stuff in training camp from this duo. I think that carries a lot of potential to maybe be the position of the future for the Chargers at running back if they start showing signs now in training camp, which I do think they will. Next up, the man that I think a lot of us sometimes forget, because yes, he is oftentimes injured. It does come with the territory of being such a massive, silhouette in the NFL at 6'8", a tight end. Sometimes injuries a little bit more likely, but that doesn't change the fact that Donald Parham, the giant target for Justin Herbert, should be out there making plays again. We've already started to see him making some plays in OTAs and minicamp. Very excited to see him come back, and this is kind of interesting to see what the Chargers have been doing the past couple of months, right? It seems that, and this is again just kind of me spectating and speculating, it seems that the Chargers are designing some kind of high point offense, right? Which what that kind of means is the Chargers are going to try and pass over the top of DBs. They'll have more contended catches, right? Which means that, let's say Donald Parham, maybe he has a guy on him, he's not completely open, but Justin Herbert trusts him in terms of throwing a high point pass and letting Donald Parham just kind of body out his defender because he's so much bigger than the guy covering him. And I think you can say that about a lot of the Chargers' weapons on offense, right? You got 6'4" Mike Williams, 6'4", 6'3" ish, Quentin Johnston. You got 6'2", 6'3" Keenan Allen, right? Maybe practicing or designing a high point offense is not a bad idea. And I think when it comes to executing on that, especially in the red zone and in around the red zone, Donald Parham can be a very featured part of that strategy. And I think Donald Parham, from what we've seen in years past, when he's involved and when he's healthy, things get pretty exciting. And I think we're going to start to see that again in training camp. It's going to start reminding Chargers fans, hey, look, we got this monster of a tight end out here. Chargers got plans for him. Let's start getting excited about it right now. And not just that, the one thing I also have to add about Donald Parham that's also unique to him is how fast he is when paired up with that speed or with that size as well. Being a 6'8" tight end with that kind of speed is very, very rare. So excited to see what he does in training camp. Next up, this is going to be one of the most important positions in all of the Chargers roster for Chargers fans to pay attention to, the safety position. All right. Alohi Gilman, I think he's going to have a fantastic camp. I really do. If you pay attention to the Chargers season last year, Alohi Gilman really started coming into his own in the second half of the year. I would dare say looking very, very nice in the last handful of games. This dude was really playing some of his best ball of his career. I think we're about to see that translate as he's handed more responsibility this year. Of course, the Chargers haven't gone out there and signed another safety. I think it's because they trust this guy, and I think we're going to start seeing signs of what that trust translates into during training camp. Now what you're going to see up top, likely is a lot, is going to be Derwin James and Alohi Gilman. In the past, you've seen Derwin James when he moves to the box or at the star position, then steps in Alohi Gilman to play up top. Now, we're likely going to see a lot of Alohi Gilman playing, let's say, free safety. He's been playing a lot of coverage back there. And having two guys, I would say, that are pretty good in run support playing safety, it's going to allow the Chargers to be a little bit more aggressive. So that's very exciting for me to think about. I'm excited to see what Alohi does with that responsibility. But it also does open up the question, what are the Chargers going to do when Derwin James moves around? Because that's a big part of this defense. Where's Derwin James? Is he in the star? Is he at the edge? Is he, playing out deep? I think the guy stepping into that role is also going to be very important. And again, we've seen this man be a gem for the Chargers in the past, a camp star in the past. I wanted to highlight number 29 a little bit in Mark Webb. Mark Webb, in the past, has looked like he's going to be the starter for this team at some point, right? At safety or free safety or whatever. He's been absolutely fantastic. But the big hash mark you got to put next to his name is health. He's really not been able to stay on the field very much. Thus, we haven't really had the opportunity to see what he has to do in coverage for the Chargers, maybe even contending for, a backup or starting role. This season, I think of all the guys out there, including our third round pick last season in JT Woods, I think that the Chargers' best opportunity for the guy to step into Derwin James' role while he's moving around is going to be Mark Webb. And I think we're going to see a lot of previews of that. We already have. Just looking through the photos, trying to grab images to show you guys and examples of these players. I saw a lot of plays where this guy was out there, jump ball, contesting, getting in the face of receivers, going out there for the pick. He was out there making plays, a ball hawk. And I think that's a big reason why Brandon Staley's been so excited to try and get this guy injected into the defense. This year, if he can stay healthy, I think this is the best opportunity for us to see that. And I think in training camp in particular, we're already starting to see it in OTAs and minicamp. I think we're going to start seeing why Brandon Staley's been so excited to try and get this man more involved. All right. Next up, we got Darius Davis on offense. Okay, so the last couple of players here, okay, spoiler alert, the TCU wide receivers, Darius Davis and Quentin Johnston. This is going to be, in my opinion, one of the most dramatic displays of camp star fandom that we've ever seen as Chargers fans, okay? Chargers fans get excited about things in camp. Chargers fans, we get excited about the potential of players when we see flashy plays in camp. I think these two players are going to offer that. So let's go ahead and focus in on Darius Davis first. Another thing Chargers fans are not very used to at this point is speed. We haven't seen a player with the speed of Darius Davis on this team in some time, okay? And I get that his 40 time doesn't translate to that, but trust me, when you watch this man play, when you see what he's clocked, in terms of his college football days, I think almost 24 miles an hour, one of the fastest ever timed in college football history, you're going to see that translate for the Chargers. And this is going to open up opportunities for the Bolts, especially in terms of how they want to use him. Gadget plays, right? The trick play kind of guy. That is what brings up highlights in training camp. I think we're going to see a lot of that from Darius Davis. You're also going to see a lot of reps for him in special teams. He's likely going to be our returner. If he can pop off for 1 or 2 scores during the course of training camp, which I think is very likely, Chargers fans are going to get very excited about his upside in special teams, but we're also going to get excited as to what he can offer in trick plays, gadgetry plays, plays behind the line of scrimmage, swings, screens, stuff of that nature. I think the Chargers have plans for him in that department. But then we also have to add on even top of that is the potential to be a speed weapon for Justin Herbert, a guy that stretches the field, a guy that can get behind the defensive backs. This is a guy that I think Chargers fans are going to be very excited to watch in training camp because it's going to be a preview of the Chargers finally adding speed for Justin Herbert on this offense, which should be very exciting to watch. Finally, the last guy on this list that is so extremely important in terms of this topic, camp stars. This is absolutely insane. We've already seen so many highlight clips during just minicamp and OTAs. Guys, go on the Chargers Twitter page. Look up what Quentin Johnston, QJ, has been doing the past month or so. It's been absolutely wild. The reason I chose this photo in particular, I think this is the play, it might have been from Easton Stick, where Quentin just goes up there. You see the ability to catch with his hands fully on display, grabs it, 2-touch, inbounds, absolutely insane play by Quentin Johnston. And that's not the only one you're going to find over the past month. So many huge opportunities for him to go out there and prove that he's going to be the Chargers feature, or one of the Chargers featured weapons. He's capitalized on them, using those hands, getting up there. Again, the jump ball kind of theory that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. He gets up there, man. QJ, 6'4". Look how far he is off the ground going up there grabbing that football. It's insane to me. And it's not just in the deep pass either. That's something that I think the Chargers are going to be using him a lot for. But it's also just getting open underneath. I think there was a huge play where he burned Asante Samuel Jr. just a couple of days ago in minicamp, where it's absolutely insane to watch this rookie kind of put our guy on skates that's been one of the better cornerbacks in the league so far. And this dude's big. That kind of shows what his athleticism could translate to for the Chargers. And we've already started to see that on display. The big flashy plays have already started. We're not even at training camp yet. I think Quentin Johnston could be the #1 camp star of the 2023 season. I'll put my stamp on it. He's been absolutely fantastic. The last guy I wanted to mention here before we close out this video in terms of camp stars, get ready, Chargers fans. We're not going to see a whole lot because that's just the nature of the beast, right? When it comes to, off-season training camp, you don't want to, show off too much before you get into the regular season. But mark my words, the impact that Kellen Moore makes on this offense, you're going to start to see it, right? You can credit a lot of the big stuff that we've already started seeing from Justin Herbert, from Quentin Johnston, from any member of the offense. You can credit a little bit of it to Kellen Moore. His philosophies, the way he's been rolling in this offense, have already been praised by guys like Keenan Allen. And I think, again, in terms of the biggest impacts that you're going to see in terms of training camp and these stars, Kellen Moore's handprint is going to be all over it in terms of the offense. That's going to be a very big one. So you guys in the comment section below, let me know what you're excited for. The rookies are coming in. We got guys like, Eric Kendricks. We got undrafted guys like Pokey Wilson. What are some of the guys that you're very excited to see this offseason? Me personally, again, I put my stamp on the biggest camp star. I think it's going to be Quentin Johnston. And I think if he continues on that route, he may carve himself out a pretty big, opportunity, even in his rookie season for the Chargers. So you guys let me know in the comment section below. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you liked what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. QJ, man. Dude's already putting up crazy highlight reel type plays. Wait till we get to training camp.